Welcome all to the January 25th, 2022 Spiny Dogfish Management Board meeting, which I'll call to order. My name is Nicola Meserve. I'm proxy for the Administrative Commissioner from Massachusetts. And I'm joined by Staff Lead Kirby here today. I want to thank Chris Bat-Savage, the outgoing chair of the Spiny Dogfish Board, for his leadership the last 2 years. And move on to the agenda. We have the enviable position of the last meeting of the day. And are there any board members that would like to make any changes or additions to the agenda? Not seeing any hands, so we will consider the agenda for January 25th approved by consent. We also have the proceedings from the board's last meeting in October 2021. Do any board members have revisions to the minutes from the October 2021 meeting? Again, no hands, so we will also consider the minutes from October 2021 approved by consent. Regarding the agenda, I'll just note that this is the agenda that was in the supplemental materials as opposed to the main materials, which removed the election of a vice chair, which will take place at the next board meeting instead. And we'll move on to public comment. This is for any items that are not on the agenda today. Members of the public can raise their hand, or if you're just on the phone, speak up if you have any comment on items not on the agenda today. Seeing no hands, we can move on to item 4, which is to consider the postponed motions from the October 2021 meeting. These revolve around the setting of the Northern Region State Waters trip limit. And I'm going to turn to Kirby for a quick recap of the board's considerations at the last meeting and some of that background information. So go ahead, Kirby, when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Maya should have a presentation she can get up on the screen. All right, thanks, Mike. If you can go to the next slide. So as noted by Nicola, during the board's last meeting in October, the board was considering the action by the Mid-Atlantic Council, which had voted to increase the federal commercial trip limit from 6,000 pounds to 750,000 pounds, or excuse me, 7,500 pounds. That change in the trip limit was in response to quota underutilization, as well as analysis that Mid-Atlantic Council staff had undertaken that had indicated that while increasing the trip limit may increase landings, it would not negatively affect the resource nor market price. So with that information in mind, the board met and reviewed that action by the Mid-Atlantic Council. The other considerations this board discussed were how the New England Fishery Management Council would act. As you all are aware, the species is jointly managed between the Mid-Atlantic and New England Fishery Management Councils. It was unclear if the New England Council was going to recommend the same motion that the Mid had recommended. The other concern was around the timing of this potential change. There had been some indication that the change in the trip limit in federal waters could be done sooner than for the fishing year 2022, which would start in May of this year. And then the last was whether, if there had been a difference between what the New England Council and the Mid had recommended, what NOAA would choose to implement if there was difference between those two. So those were some of the main points. The board, as many of you remember, moved to first consider a motion to set at least a 7,500 pound trip limit in the northern region for the fishing year 2022, contingent on NOAA Fisheries adopting at least that level for federal waters. And if at least a 7,500 pound triple limit is not approved in federal waters, then the 6,000 pound triple limit would remain in place. As you guys remember, there was then a motion to substitute, and that motion read in the next slide, to set the northern region trip limit in state waters for the fishing year 2022 equal to the trip limit in federal waters approved by NOAA Fisheries. Given back and forth discussion, the board moved to postpone these motions following that meeting. So today, I wanted to just note that after that meeting, the New England Council voted to increase the commercial federal trip limit to 7,500 pounds, which is consistent with the Mid-Atlantic Council's recommendation. Additionally, for this board's understanding, both bodies are supporting the pursuit of a framework adjustment to develop additional changes to the trip limit if warranted, pending the results of the research track assessment that should be completed later this summer. So next slide. For this afternoon, the board is to consider the postpone motions for adjusting the commercial trip limit in the northern region state waters for fishing year 2022. And I'll just note that if needed, the postpone motions could be withdrawn with the majority support of the board, as they are property of the board now, and a new motion could be put forward. So with that, I'll take any questions, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. We'll look for questions for Kirby for the information he's presented. I'll start. I have one that would be directed towards NOAA Fisheries. I believe Cynthia is here, and I was hoping she could provide us any clarity on the timing of the services proposed, or more importantly, maybe the final rule, and what the effective date for the potential trip limit increase would be for federal waters. It may help us to understand whether our motions are adequate, or we might be better served with a new motion.
I'm here and can respond if
yes, that'd be great. Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay. Sorry, Madam Chair. Yeah, so we have the proposed rule based on both council's recommendations almost ready to go. We're expecting publication of the proposed rule and subsequent comment period, probably early mid-February. So expecting it very soon. As of right now, just the way things are shaking out, because we are doing it through the federal rule through the specifications action for the 2022 specifications, it's basically projected to be effective for the start of the fishing year in May. But if folks think that it would be desirable to have an earlier effective time, for example, upon publication of the final rule, which will likely be, I'm ballparking, but probably with the proposed rule coming out in February, final rule will probably be late March, early April-ish. So you would gain maybe a couple of weeks to a month at most. It would be effective upon publication. If that's something you would like to shoot for, I would suggest participating in the public comment period when the proposed rule publishes and requesting earlier effectiveness rather than just the start of the fishing year. So that is an option. But that's kind of where we are time-wise. I can go further into that if there are further questions.
Thank you, Cynthia. Are there any other questions? Either to Kirby's slides or to the timing of the federal rule? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so I think at this point, I'd like to ask if Kirby or Maya could bring up the two postponed motions as they are essentially brought back onto the table, and we can take them up.
Yeah, just give Maya a second. I sent her also our motions as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, so that brings us to the substitute motion is what it is in play right now, which was to move to substitute to set the northern region, Maine through Connecticut state waters trip limit for FY 2022 equal to the trip limit in federal waters approved by NOAA fisheries. So inherent in this motion is that the northern region limit would not be increased until May 1, provided that NOAA fisheries finalizes the rule in time for that. So is there any board discussion on that, or desire to amend this motion, or we can always move to a vote on it if there's no discussion. Emerson Hasbrook.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm a little unclear here on moving forward. So if we were to support the substitute motion, that means that the increase in the trip limit would not go into effect until final rule is implemented by NOAA. But if we support the main motion instead, states can go ahead and increase their trip limit as soon as they want to, or as soon as they are able to. Is my interpretation correct, or am I incorrect?
Both of the main motion and the substitute motion include FY 2022 in them. So my interpretation would be that we'd be beholden to May 1 for the state waters trip limits to be changed, unless either of these motions are changed.
Thank you.
Are there any other thoughts on the motion? I think that it may help with the state's rulemaking process if we have a date certain. I know in Massachusetts we'll be gearing up to make a rule change, or already are gearing up to make a rule change, and having the certainty of the May 1 date would be of some benefit to the state rulemaking process.
Madam Chair, you've got a couple hands in the queue. It looks like Chris Bat-Savage and then Ray Kane.
All right, Chris, to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just trying to remember from the meeting back in October, I think it seems that the substitute motion is maybe a little less prescriptive than the main motion if it was the desire of the New England states to have a state waters trip limit that was the same as the federal waters trip limit. And then in terms of whether to have this implemented on May 1st or sooner, I guess a question for the New England states, since this really applies to them, is there much benefit to having this before May 1st, considering kind of the availability of dogfish in state waters that time of year versus maybe in the summertime when the fishery is a little more active? Thanks.
Okay, thank you for that, Chris. Maybe there'll be some other northern region states that'll want to opine on that, but I'll turn to Ray Kane next. Ray, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Ray, you were muted by the organizer, but you are not anymore, so you should be able to unmute yourself. I'm just still, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the way I'm reading these motions, we're dependent on NOAA fisheries. And when will their rulemaking process be done so that we, in fact, can start the season on May 1?
Well, Cynthia, thank you for the question, Ray. Cynthia indicated that they can aim for May 1 for that effective date, or if there were comment from the states during the public comment process on the proposed rule, it's possible that it could be upon the publication of the final rule, which would be in late March to early April potentially.
Okay, well, my concern is that moving to a 7,500 pound trip limit, that it does open on May 1. Not being dependent on NOAA, because we know how things can get bogged down at NOAA.
It doesn't sound like there is concern that it would be after May 1 at this point.
Okay, thank you, Madam
What's being
Chairman.
presented.
Also, wouldn't this be a coastwide trip limit, both the northern and southern region?
No, just the northern region has a uniform, maximum trip limit set by the ASMOC because they have a regional quota. The other states have their unique state-specific quotas and set the trip limit as they see fit. And of course, when the ASMOC sets the northern region limit, it's still the state's option whether or not to go up to that limit or not, or something more conservative.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Nicole, I don't know if you're able to see. Are you seeing the hands?
I'm not seeing the hands, so why don't you go ahead, Tony?
Yep. Okay. You have Megan Ware followed by Cherie Patterson.
Thank you. Megan, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to answer the question, I think that Chris Savage posed to the northern states, my preference would be to start on May 1st. I think it gives all states the same start date for this change, and it would create parity between state and federal waters for enforcement. So I see some advantages there.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Cherie Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Megan. The northern region really does not harvest a lot between January and May 1st. So I would prefer just to see some continuity occur between federal and state waters. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Cherie. So I think that's what is achieved with the substitute motion. Are there any other hands, Tony?
I see no additional hands.
Okay, thank you. So I think we can turn to the substitute motion. If there's no desire to amend it, do board members need a moment to caucus on the substitute motion? If you do, please raise your hand.
I have no hands currently. Still no hands.
Okay, so we will, I'll try this the easy way then, and ask if there's any opposition to the substitute motion.
I see no hands in opposition.
Any abstentions?
No abstentions.
Okay, thank you. So we'll consider the motion to substitute approved unanimously, and that will become our main motion. And we'll see if we can proceed in the same manner with that as the main motion to set the northern region, Maine through Connecticut state waters trip limit for FY 2022 equal to the trip limit in federal waters approved by NOAA fisheries. Is there any opposition to the main motion?
Nicole, I don't know if he was wanting for opposition, but I didn't know if Ray Kane had a question. His hand did go up and then went back down.
Okay. But before we vote then, Ray, do you have a question?
No, I see you moved that to the main motion. Thank you very much. And I was gonna, never mind.
All right. Thanks, Ray.
Yeah. Just a point of clarity, I think given that it was substituted, it should now say move to set as opposed to move to substitute to set, correct?
Correct. This is now the main motion. I don't sense a need for caucus given that it passes as a substitute. And is there any opposition to the motion?
I have no hands raised in opposition.
Okay, and any abstentions to note?
No hands raised in abstention.
Okay, thank you, Tony. We will consider the motion approved by unanimous consent. And that concludes, I believe, item 4 on the agenda, Kirby.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move to number 5 and ask Tina Berger to present a nomination for the Spiny Dogfish Advisory Panel. Are you there, Tina?
Maybe we'll
Well,
just give her a second if need be. We can get that up for you.
Kirby, why don't you just go ahead and get those names out there for the board if you have them.
Got it. Sure thing. So there was one nomination sent forward, and that was for Captain Rick Bellavance. He's a commercial rod and reel fisherman and charter boat captain from Rhode Island. His nomination was included in briefing materials.
Okay, thank you, Kirby. Is there a member of the board that would like to make that motion?
We have Jason McNamee.
And a second?
Matt Gates.
Okay. Thank you, Jason and Matt. Is there any opposition to the motion to nominate Captain Rick Bellavance to the Spiny Dogfish Advisory Panel?
Don't see any hands in opposition.
Great, we'll consider that approved by unanimous consent then as well. Congratulations to Rick. And that'll bring us down to our last agenda item, which is other business. And I would just like to personally thank Kirby for his service and his dedication to professionalism and attention to detail that he brings to all of his tasks as a commission staff member. And we're going to miss him and wish him well with his new position with USGS. So thank you, Kirby. Is there any other business to come before the Spiny Dogfish Board? I see Jason Didden's hand. Why don't you go ahead, Jason?
Hi there, thank you. Just wanted to highlight the Spiny Dogfish Research Track Assessment Working Group continues to meet and is having a stakeholder workshop on February 15th. It'll be posted at least to the Mid-Atlantic Council's calendar. They're just looking to do outreach to fishery participants and interested parties about the approaches the assessment is taking and get input from them. So if people are interested, you can be able to find links to that soon, if not now, on the council's calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason, for that important note. I'm sure the states can help advertise that as well as possible. Is there any other business to come before the board today?
I don't see any other hands raised, Nicola.
All right, thanks, Tony. Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn? I see raise hand and Shree Patterson. And thank you. Any opposition? Seeing none, the board meeting is adjourned.